Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the meme coin market. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Trump's Commerce Secretary pick, Howard Lutnick, securing a 5% stake in Tether, the colossal stablecoin company for his company Cantor Fitzgerald, to spark Bitcoin lending. Very interesting piece of news there. Next, Pump Fund live stream takedown calls, as the live stream includes gunfire, threats to commit suicide, and violence against children. All kinds of dramatic stuff going on in the Pump Fund trenches. We will break that down in a little bit too. And then also Binance published an AI crypto report naming GOAT Virtuals and DAO.Fun. Looking forward to Sammy's breakdown on that section. He's been specializing in that AI sector for a little bit now. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs, and a discussion on the general state of the markets at the moment. So stay tuned for that. But just before we get there, just a reminder, friends, that we do not know anything for sure. Please proceed with caution. This is not financial advice. This market is very risky. So use your own judgment. With that out of the way, Brad, it is Monday. It is the 25th of November, and you are sporting the same hairstyle as me today. Is this planned? Is it pre-planned? It's been something you've been thinking about over some time. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's intentional. I'm talking loud. I'm on the move. I'm in Florence now. Came over from Turkey, and now that I'm in Europe, I knowing that you're also in Europe, I feel like it's on me to fit in. I'm no longer part of the Eastern world, part of the Central world, and I have to fit in. So I'm doing my best here.
It makes perfect sense now that you explained it in that way. I don't know why you would do anything other than that. Question goes to you then, Sam. You know, Bread's complying with the modern market European standards here. When are you going to comply?
Well, I feel a bit ostracized here because I've got curly hair, so I'm now having to wear the hat to hide the hair, just so that I can feel like I fit in.
Yeah, it's difficult. I feel your pain, but I feel like there's things you can do. I like the things you can do still. No?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I've tried the straightening look before, but it looked like a wig, so I think I'm gonna stick with the hat. Yeah.
All right. Now we can
now
make
I'm
the check look ostracized. People in the crowd, they just put on my hat. So now it's 2-on-1 in the other direction. And D-check, I'm afraid you don't belong.
I'm trying to see if I've got a hat around here. I don't have a hat. All right, I'm alone. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Before we get into the headlines, how are we doing otherwise, guys? Brad, you're traveling. You're in Europe now. That going well? All things fine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be real here. The food's better in Europe, and the pace is just different. Frankly, it's like, one, I have access to protein again, which is amazing. I got my mousses, I got my shakes, I got my bars, like all that stuff's great. And then the sheer chaos that exists in Asia, like the pace of life that exists over there relative to here. Very fond of being able to walk around and not worry about getting smoked by a scooter. That's a big boon for my life right now.
Big bonus points for not getting run over. I always think that's a positive way of life, to not get run over. Good stuff. Look, let's get into the market stuff as usual. We've got all kinds of interesting stuff to discuss as usual. Let's start with the price action, as always, coming to you from the snapshot, which is pinned up top in the Twitter space if you are listening in. But I'm going to share it on screen for the people who are watching in as well. Remember, we're live on X video and YouTube as well. So starting with the majors, we've got Bitcoin up just 1% to 98.2K. ETH is the one that is rallying now, finally, up almost 4% to almost 3.5K, just a touch underneath at the moment. And Solana's up 1% at $252. Bit more context on the 7 days. Bitcoin's up 9% in 7 days. ETH's up 14% in 7 days. And Solana is up 4% in 7 days. Getting into the meme side of things, how are things looking? Going to refresh the screen to make sure this is live. Doge is up 1% at 42 cents. That's up 17% on 7 days. Pepe's pretty much flat. Bonk's just up a couple of percent. Whiff is up a couple of percent. But some of these other major memes are down on the 7 days. Bonk's down 10%. Whiff's down 10%. Flocky is down 10% as well. Popcat's down 23%. So like some of these major memes, I think people are sliding out of in order to chase some other runners. in other places, or that's what this data is suggesting. Peanuts down 24% in 7 days, although it's bounced 12% today. Mog's up 11%. Looking for some other ones at the moment. Zero Bro still looking really strong, up 17%. Probably one of the AI favorites at the moment. Frog's kind of retraced, but got some of those gains back at up 23% today, but down 20% on the 7 days. So various things going on
Can we
there.
just pause? I hate that everything we called out is like memes. Memes is what's interesting. Like we have to swing back to actual things at some point. Like this is where the money's being made. But like everything you made, like you just named, is just like, oh, Fog's down, or not Fog, Peanuts down because the guy who Squirrel died is now advocating for a renaissance or whatever vengeance token that he fucking did. Like none of that matters. It's just a dude doing something. I'm looking like some shit. I want utility again. I want the mid curve stuff.
The major memes are down, and we're trying to figure out how the capital will rotate from major memes into low cap memes into the mid memes. That's what happens.
Part of this is me coping because I bought a shit ton of Doge like I don't know, like 2 or 3 months ago. Because I was like, dude, of course memes, king of memes, gonna come back. It's simple, whatever. And then I capitulated. I think I bought a bunch of Arrow with it or something, which is fine. Arrow's doing great, but like, so some of it's cope too.
Dude, I bought a ton of Doge in the bear market as well, just like when it wasn't doing anything ever. I was just like, I just was too impatient, basically. Took it out, tried to chase something else. When just holding it would have been a great bet. Okay, that's our little cope section introduced into the daily news as well. Maybe that will be a routine segment. Getting into the headlines, I'm going to share the screen as well for this to make sure you can see it. Trump's Commerce Secretary pick Howard Lutnick secures a 5% stake in Tether for his company Cantor Fitzgerald to spark Bitcoin-backed lending. This got me super excited when I read about it. So I'll be pretty happy to break that down for you in one of our segments today. Brad will be breaking down the pump fund segment later. There's all kinds of calls for either the website to be taken down or the live streams to be taken down, as various things were being broadcast, including gunfire, threats to commit suicide, violence against children, amongst a host of other things. Like things are getting pretty wild there. The regulation of the internet has always been a challenging thing. So Brad will be breaking down that segment in just a little bit. And then Binance also published an AI crypto report naming GOAT Virtuals and DAO and DAO.fun. Sammy provided a little summary here where he said that crypto provides AI full autonomy, previously not possible with the TradFi ecosystem. Protocols mentioned were Virtuals, GOAT, and DAO Fun. Potential applications, agents have proliferated all market segments. That's just an observation that the report is making, but he's going to break down more in full what's going on in that very, very promising sector. Maybe that's slightly more utility for Bread, although they're basically trading like meme coins. Maybe there's something underlying there, although big question mark. So maybe Sam will be able to shed some light there. I've got some interesting criticism of that too. Some notable sales: CryptoPunks still flying high. Green clown hair sold for 44.99 ETH. Cherniac ringers sold for 7.5 ETH. Nakamoto Freedom Card, I haven't seen that one in a while. It's by the memes by 6529 collection, sold for 5.95 ETH. Just looking at the main ETH NFTs, doesn't seem to be any big movement. Lil Pudgies were up 7%. Bored Apes steady at around 12 ETH. Captains at 2 ETH. Pudgy Penguins themselves up a few percent to 11.2, but they were as high as 12 something towards the end of last week. So no notable moves there necessarily. But just getting to the rest of the news before we get to the main headlines today. Bitcoin ETFs, this is an interesting stat. Last week bought more than 10 times the Bitcoin mined. That's 34K Bitcoin, while only 3,150 Bitcoin were mined. Hong Kong's ZA Bank begins crypto trading against fiat currencies on a banking app. I think that was reported by The Block, considered to be quite a big move for crypto retail in Hong Kong. Chill Guy soars 50% to more than a $400 million market cap with rumors of a listing. Alts, and this is an interesting one actually. Alts, those old Dino coins, Cardano, Avalanche, DOT, ICP, XRP run 30 to 60% in the last 7 days. People haven't really talked about it that much because everyone's in memes. They've run like 30 to 60% in the last 7 days, probably outperforming everything in your portfolio. So that's interesting to note. Some more news: Pudgy Toys to return to Walmart in 2025. Love to see that. Jupiter proposes 2 more community airdrops. There's a big vote going on for how the airdrop is going to be happening with Jupiter. Everyone is using Jupiter almost all the time. I'm sure people will want to know the outcome of that vote. So keep an eye out because that might determine how much you get in of Jupiter tokens. And then finally, AI16Z drops underneath $200 million market cap after a weekend where they announced that the AI combinator is separated from AI16Z to prevent lack of focus. There was all kinds of drama going on with AI16Z the last few days. Seems like maybe the drama's over because they've separated the stuff, but well, the market cap has suffered as a consequence. Before we get to the main headlines, guys, I know we've all got our respective breakdowns to do. I think they're all super interesting today. Anything catching your attention from the other bits of news that you'd want to get into? Maybe Sam first. Anything catching your attention there?
Yeah, there's a serum sale actually that was about 200k, which I thought was quite interesting. Wow. Because we don't see those change hands very often, and I wonder whether it's a gambler's premium where they're going to use it on one of their apes to see if they can reveal something and just lose a lot of money just by doing that. But yeah, that pumped a little bit, and I had a look in his wallet. He's got like X copies, so I don't know if it's a collector's piece where he's just accumulating some rare pieces. But on the other side, because ETH's pumping, and I'm starting to think, okay, well, maybe ETH NFTs are going to come back, especially like digital art. And there was one that was minting. It started minting yesterday. So Meridian's the artwork a little while ago. He's doing something called bit frames. So Matt, who's the artist, is doing bit frames and creating a generative art project, which I thought was quite interesting. And that's available to mint until probably about another 4 weeks, sorry. So the end of December. So you've got a bit of time to go and mint that. It's an open edition. It's on ETH mainnet, and you can contribute to that. So it's just interesting to see that, and whether we're seeing that sort of recur this time around with probably be early 2021, where you kind of see those pieces get minted that then end up becoming really expensive, whether it's autoglyphs, fidenzas, and stuff like that. It's almost like a ETH NFT renaissance.
I mean, go on, Brad.
And we've kind of posited that a few times over the last. We've been doing this for a year, right? And in other words, like, are they going to swing back? Are they going to swing back? Have you, like, now that we're closer? I feel like we're starting to see the green shoots all over the place. Obviously, it's concentrated on some of the majors and then a lot of meme coins and stuff. Now that you're a little closer, do you think you're more comfortable saying that the swing back to NFTs is something that is realized, or do you think it's something that bypasses them entirely as a category?
Sam?
Yeah, it's hard to say, to be honest, because I think there's a lot of attention, new attention on stuff that's different this time around. So you wonder whether that attention is going to flow back to ETH NFT specifically. But there are collectors there, and I do see these funds collecting NFT art that's on ETH. So I think that the value will eventually come back to certain pieces, but not everything.
I would actually argue, good question, Brad. I would actually argue that it's already happened in some way, and it's happening. So one way it's already been happening is that, but the width of the window, it's not a window, is it? What's the better analogy? The scope of eligible collections is much smaller than anyone would like it to be. Like last cycle, everything pumped because everyone thought digital art was going to be the best thing ever in the world, and it really is super cool, and it's a legit asset class, and that's amazing. But through the process of time, I think time has kind of eroded away the eligible collections that can maintain themselves in that top echelon. And so something like Xcopy has been on a heater for months, like months. There have been a variety of, and it doesn't take many. There just needs to be like 6 or 7 collectors who become convicted in an artist, and they absolutely send the whole thing because, they're in competition with each other for the pieces. The holders haven't are fairly resolved to not sell. So I'd argue on some level the art side it's already happened. And then it's already happening with punks, I think, like that vicious pump from, what was it, like 22, 23 up to 35. The floor on punks was as low as 60K at one point, just dipped beneath 60K. And now it's up at 130 or something. Let me just double check that because I don't want to say the wrong USD number. Yeah, it's exactly right. 37.69 ETH, $131,000. That's a $70,000 swing in what, a few days, in a few weeks maximum. So like there's all these humongous trades that are taking place as well, but because everyone is so focused on memes, I don't think anyone is talking about any of them. And maybe even linked to that, going to like one of these other bits of news before we get into the main headlines that I thought was interesting, is this alt stuff. Like who, and again, no one's really talking about it that much because as is the case, I think everyone is just completely deep in the meme coin ecosystem, but you would have got completely outperformed by the average Cardano holder in the last 7 days, who are up almost 40%. Avalanche is up 30%. Polkadot is up 56% in the last 7 days. Like, okay, I
I
appreciate.
think the portfolio that I saw was someone's like, if on election day, if you had bought like Cardano, Polkadot, and like Stellar Lumens from 2017, you would have beat basically the entirety of the rest of the tokens out there, outside of like a handful of AI coins.
Yeah, I think that's
Something
probably the case.
that I find quite interesting on that as well is this AI XBT, this AI agent. It's been doing some pretty decent predictions. Like it predicted Avalanche just before it popped off, so AVAX. It's predicted Stellar Lumens, was it XLM, and also Phantom. So those Altel ones, it's kind of done those predictions, and then within 24 hours. And I do wonder whether people are starting to pay attention to that AI agent and then just following its calls. So I don't know if it's becoming like a self-fulfilling prophecy, whether it is actually doing this analysis and kind of predicting stuff that's actually happening based on on-chain data.
Although like, he's shooting a shit ton of tweets out there. I went through his feed, and like he's tweeting like every hour or so on a different ticker. So like, yeah, some of those are going to hit when everything's shooting up, 30 to 50% every day.
Can I go be a bit contrarian here and say I don't really understand? Like, I'm not fully on board with the agent stuff. Like, I'm not entirely impressed by the level of communication demonstrated by the agents. Like, I don't think it's that good. I think they make quite a lot of mistakes. I'm just not enamored by it yet. Like, and I have the sense that I'm going to share this take. This is actually about DeSci rather than the agent stuff. This is from Tarun Chitra. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. He's like super prominent. I think they run Robot Ventures, right? Brett, I think you're familiar with him as well. He said, "Why?" Someone asked him, "Why are you becoming the Mert of DeSci?" Kind of insinuating that it's being like hypercritical of it. Said, "I don't like scams that pretend to reform a broken system, yet are really meme coins for bio grad students trying to get crypto rich people to fund things with zero accountability. I also worked in things these clowns claim to do." I get the set. I mean, look, maybe all meme coins are a little bit like this to some degree. But the AI stuff, the DeSci stuff, big question marks against it for me at the moment. I think, yeah, someone will do it well and someone will do it properly. But I think a lot of people are wrapped up in the hyper excitement of it at the moment. Not really, like Legendary's explanation of what DeSci was last week sounded absurd, like truly, truly absurd. I was laughing as he was explaining it. It's like, fair enough, that's the claim. But
I think it's great. DeSci is great for like fundraising for initiatives that just can't get funding in the traditional
yeah, it's
world.
just fundraising.
It is, but it is. I mean, it is controversial because I mean, my partner's a doctor, and she's the moment I told her about it, she was like, "This is fucking batshit crazy. Like half this stuff is so absurd that it's borderline dangerous. That this is becoming like a thing, and you're able to get this out, and people could actually be tested with these drugs or whatever's being created without like proper process." So I get it from like a medical standpoint, but it is interesting from like a fundraising perspective, where there are some things that probably will come out of it that might not otherwise have done that could cure these some diseases that are quite prevalent. So,
and my pushback for the AI, the XBT agent, is that what that thing's going to be good at is synthesizing a shit ton of data, which is what it's doing, right? Like it has access to all of Twitter and all of Twitter commentary, plus like some actual references to the real world that maybe we don't make a connection to, because you need to have like he made something about Aave the other day. We're like, oh, the amount of protocol TVL is equivalent to, the top 500 banks. And like, it was in there and like where the threshold was, all that shit. And like, that doesn't take any specialized information, but it takes understanding and awareness of all of the information to be able to synthesize it, pull it together, and make a meaningful reference, right? And the type of people that can do that, like my brain doesn't go to connecting Aave to the fucking traditional banks. I'm not a banker, I'm not finance, like that's not my history. So it takes a unique intersection of person to do that. And like, because bots can have access to basically everything and understand it, even though it hallucinates sometimes, like that is useful to be able to tie all that shit together because it can actually synthesize a very large amount of data, which we as humans cannot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think like it's a good indicator, but I think you need to do your own research and dig into it and actually challenge it, because there is some stuff that it's put out that hasn't been accurate. I think there was the reference to that KOL AI agent. Like I think Legendary asked him about that, and the numbers that it quoted were just wrong. So there are like areas that it needs to improve on, but I think the more mainstream stuff it's pretty good at. Just need to challenge it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, if you want to ride the wave and try to capitalize on the momentum, fair enough, but big question mark for me as things stand. Okay, let's get into, before we get into the main headlines, Brad, you set an interesting segment up here. People are always arguing about different L1s at the moment and what's the best way for them to define themselves and how they can accrue value to themselves and their community. What are your thoughts here? What makes a good L1 roadmap? You've prepared something here with your thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, this one, we thought about this segment, we're talking about technical things, and our thought was to bring forward the discussions that are happening inside of the technical ecosystem. And of late, we kind of touched on it last week with Ethereum as moneyness. Of late, there has been a huge conversation between Solana's, the Bitcoins of the world, and Ethereum roadmap, because it's kind of hazy. So setting this one up in like broadly, the name is like what makes a good L1 roadmap. So the topic itself, Solana has a very actionable roadmap. You may have seen it on the timeline. It's called IBRL, and this is just what Tolly has been tweeting a lot. It's called increased bandwidth, reduced latency. Bitcoin's is very simple, right? Digital gold. Ethereum's roadmap, as you've seen, is either a giant chart with a shit ton of stuff on it, or it's like, is it money? Is it world computer? Is it digital oil? And you've seen a lot of pushback between the two camps, now three camps if you include Bitcoin, of like which one is best at one, driving direction for the chain, two, driving like like pulling the community together, and three, coming up with actionable items associated to the roadmap, right? Like if you say like Ethereum, for instance, wants to be money, what do you do to be money? And that is like, people don't know. So then it could be kind of anything, and it's up to interpretation. So anyways, just like setting up the two sides. So again, Solana Bitcoin is in one camp, where the actionable roadmaps, you have Tolly, who's the founder of Solana, who's just been constantly reiterating that like Solana just wants to be fast and cheap, which means IBRL, they've made a little website about it that you just click to it, and it's like a big black screen that just says increase bandwidth, reduce latency. That's its mission statement. It's not about tokenomics. It's nothing about anything. It's just, we want this, and we want to get to this, we have to increase bandwidth, reduce latency, right? Like that's what their goal is, because they want to compete with NASDAQ, just be decentralized. And Bitcoin likewise wants to be digital gold. What do you do to be digital gold? Nothing. You don't touch the thing, and you just let it be gold. Whereas the other side of the camp, or the other example of this would be Ethereum. This is backed by like David Hoffman, Sossel, all those guys. They're saying Ethereum wants to be the best DA layer, wants to be the best execution environment, wants to be the most decentralized node set, and like all of these things. And it begs the question, if you're trying to be all of these things, you're not going to be best at one of those things. Where is the value prop? How do you accrue value? All of that stuff. And again, like on the increased bandwidth, reduced latency arc of Tolly, Vitalik commented on that, returned and said to come up with his own. It was DOPE was the acronym that he came up with, which was decentralization, obligatory, practicality, essential, which I think is a perfect like encapsulation of what the hell Ethereum is. It's kind of heady, kind of philosophical. Even with that, like their attempts to try to like distill into a single message for like moving forward, kind of like but anyways, it means it's not confined. It can be anything, which is kind of what Ethereum wants. They want to be able to do anything. It's an open permissionless protocol that anyone can access, anyone can run a node on, whatever. But this is the big argument that's going on, is like, do you need this very simple, very distilled message in order to align the community, galvanize developers, and align for a direction to accrue value to your network and to your token, or attract people broadly? There's no correct path, obviously, and obviously, well, with this being the forefront of the frontier, there is no example that we can point to that says like this is how you're supposed to do this. We're all trying this stuff out and learning. And you saw last week, B-Check, actually, when we brought up the money stuff, you yourself was like, what does that even mean? Do I even want that? Like, it's kind of a questionable thing. And myself, as a technical person, if I'm having to pick a side here, honestly, I prefer the Solana approach and even the Bitcoin thing, even though I don't necessarily agree with like the total direction technically of Bitcoin. The simple messaging does allow for easy dissemination of a narrative, which you do need for a lot of these things. Now, all this stuff won't matter if a couple $100 million gets pumped into the ETF for Ethereum over the next few days. Then the tech looks great, but if we're talking purely with outside of that, I think that's where I align.
Interesting. Very, very interesting stuff. Amazing, excellent breakdown, Brad. One of the questions that's been emerging for me when thinking about Solana versus ETH, and well, frankly, all three of them kind of competing against each other at the moment, is the L2 roadmap. There's a bit of a discussion, I think, between the ETH community as to whether, like, do you see the ETH L2s in competition with each other? Should they be working together? Are they like states that are united but also in competition? What's the particular stance there? Base's numbers, for example, have been doing fantastically well. Is that bullish for ETH?
I actually got into a Twitter fight with Toli and not Toli, but Raj and a few other people from the Solana Foundation, because Solana is obviously doing well, and I think her name's Lucy, one of the foundation members for Solana. Is like this whole Sol versus ETH stuff, and I'll get to the L2 stuff, but the Sol versus ETH stuff is not going to make it. Like, that's not the right narrative. We're all fighting the big corpos outside of the space, whatever. And then Toli just quote tweeted that and said, "I'm competing against Ethereum for the best decentralized execution environment." And then everyone starts like, yeah, like, why the fuck are we acting like we're not competing against each other? Clearly we are. Like, there is overlap between all of these things. Should embrace that, and you should like actually do that. And so that is just going to say that like the politically correct answer is like no. L2s probably are going to say they're not competing against each other. It's kumbaya, one giant Ethereum ecosystem. But the fact of the matter is they are absolutely competing against each other for the same users, because one user can only go whatever. Now, like, it blurs a little bit with chain abstraction and bridging, whatever, like you get the interoperable stuff inside of Superchain. But even in that, I would argue, right, you have Base, which is the dominant player inside of the Superchain ecosystem, against Optimism, against, Shape, against everyone. And yeah, one user on chain is going to spend more time in one of those environments. They're going to have one chain that they consider home, where they have like most of their liquidity, where they do their basic actions. And from there, yeah, like it's a competition.
I like it. Sam, any further thoughts, reflections, questions here?
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about the L2 landscape, and I think previously it was like, it's so easy to roll up or spin up an L2. It's going to be an incredibly competitive environment. But I think Saigar posted like an alternate view, and I guess this comes from him building out Abstract, basically saying that people don't realize how expensive it is to do this. And actually, even though it is a bit of a money printer, there are a lot of costs that go into actually maintaining it, like basically just servicing it. But it just kind of immediately cuts out a lot of people from doing it in a sustainable way. So it's just up on the screen for people that are looking in. But I don't know if you have a view on that, Brad, like whether that L2 landscape is going to change, and actually there will be like some dominant L2s that come through, and this competitiveness will kind of drop away to an extent, because they'll find their own niches, or they'll effectively kind of have their own market share. And I guess there will always be that vampire attack, like similar to like OpenSea and Blur with the marketplaces. But do you think they will eventually harmonize?
So what do you mean harmonize? Like in the fact that like they won't like outwardly compete with each other, or that like eventually we get to a point where it's not necessary?
So in terms of like a lot more L2s coming to market, proliferating that like whole ecosystem and becoming like a bit saturated. Like I think that I guess what Saigar's getting at is that it's actually prohibitively expensive to run an L2. And a lot of people aren't just going to be able to do it. There's the idea that you can just spin one up really quickly, but actually to maintain that competitive advantage and actually deliver like a decent service to apps that are building on it, that can be a bit of a challenge.
So yeah, if we're talking like long-term future, what I think is going to actually happen to L2 landscape, like that's exactly why I joined the Mega Geek team. Frankly, like I do not believe there will be a shit ton, and I think the chains that one settle to Ethereum and then like on-chain is going to always suck for us if we're going to like have to bridge across the world like all these L2s. That because we are, in my opinion, too close to the metal. We want to bridge. We want to have our assets. We want to do it. We don't want to deal with the chain abstraction layers. So we're not going to get to this world where like, oh, kumbaya, don't worry about it. It's USDC, and I just swap and do whatever. You like the power users are going to be on a chain, and we're going to settle to the things that are simple, and we're willing to give up a little bit to do that. So I think the chains that prioritize being a single environment as big as humanly possible, which is what Solana's doing, right? Solana's doing that, but on the L1. But Solana has a little bit of overhead because it has to do consensus, it has to do whatever. L2s have the power to offload some of that, which means they can get higher performance metrics because they don't have to do the decentralized sequencer set, whatever, even though people are trying to do that because they're trying to do the kumbaya thing. So I think, yes, you'll have like under 5 L2s that eat 85% of all users and transactions. Because it's simple, they're big enough to handle it, and like that's what people have shown to want by going to Solana. And then you're going to have a long tail of all these tiny ass things that are either very niche, like app chain kind of stuff, like Uniswap. Maybe go there, do some like simple trading or whatever. And yeah, they just exist. And yeah, so like we'll hit a realistic number, but no, I don't know how big that number is, but I do think the vast majority of stuff is going to aggregate to under 5 L2s that can handle the very bulk of all activity.
Like it. Great breakdown. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on this, Brad. It's something that everyone is trying to evaluate as we move forward. We'll also be interesting to see other L1s come to the market, like things like Monad and things of that nature. Like hopefully not too far away, see how they compete in this ecosystem. But look, we'll kind of keep on top of that conversation as we move through to the end of the year and into next year. But let's get into the main headlines for today. Some very, very interesting different segments, I think. The first one, which I'm going to share with you, is this news that the Trump's Commerce Secretary pick, Howard Lutnick, secures a 5% stake in Tether for his company Cantor Fitzgerald to spark Bitcoin-backed lending. I'm going to share the screen for people who are watching in. So for me, when I read this, I think there's 2 bits of news here that are interesting. The first is the Cantor Fitzgerald stake in Tether. So Cantor Fitzgerald are a huge investment team. According to data, they hold $3.5 billion worth of assets. And they have taken a stake in Tether. Tether obviously being the colossal entity that is behind USDT, constantly boasting rightly that of all the profits that they make, they're incredibly profitable. The largest stablecoin as things stand. And so they've taken a 5% stake in that. The one thing I thought was interesting there, because it's interesting that they've kind of got into that business, the stablecoin business, by taking a stake. Second thing I thought was interesting is that this is a very close tie to the US now. And the USDT has actually always been something that has been frowned upon, at least that from what I could tell in Western media. USDC, run by Circle, has always been the one that people have spoken about the most, that people have been most comfortable holding. Obviously got a very close relationship with Coinbase, and they have a commercial relationship to kind of keep distributing USDC rather than anything else. So I thought it was interesting from that perspective, showing that, look, maybe this market is just too damn big. There's no need to FUD Tether forever. So that's the one part of it. And then the second part of it that I thought was interesting is the fact that there's Bitcoin-backed lending, which is part of this plan. So Lutnick, according to the article, Lutnick plans a $2 billion Bitcoin loan program, betting on crypto's lending potential in traditional finance. Any other important bits of news? Cantor reportedly manages most of Tether's $132 billion of assets, so that's already been the case, earning it tens of millions of annual fees. And the Tether leadership actually had this to say. They said, the CFO said privately earlier this year that Lutnick will use his political clout to try to diffuse threats facing Tether, reported the Wall Street Journal. However, a spokesperson denied these claims, stating Tether's relationship with Cantor is entirely professional, based on managing reserves. Just for context, Lutnick plans to step down from his role at Cantor upon his Senate confirmation. He says, I intend to divest my interest in these companies to comply with US government ethics rules. So the way I make sense of all of this news coming together is that, one, stablecoins, we've been saying it forever, best business in the world, going to be far more universal than they already are now. Second point, USDT, interestingly, could maybe have less stigma attached to it if it is more closely aligned with people who are part of in the US government. I do think that there's always been question marks, even in this article that we're reading. That there's the standard reporting. Tether faces scrutiny over reserves and illicit use, but Lutnick defends its transparency. I think in the end, when you get people who are very prominent into prominent positions, I think that's going to go away a little bit. And I think USDC Circle has a bit more of competition on its hands, especially as it comes to the Western market. And then finally, this Bitcoin loan thing, I've always been, because I came into this universe from NFTs first, I always thought NFT lending was like one of the coolest use cases because it's such a huge use case for finance more generally. And I think it's no different for more traditional lending against our crypto assets. I think it's going to be absolutely huge as Bitcoin, hopefully, fingers crossed, continues to rocket as it's adopted more by nation states, by corporate treasuries, and by others. You don't really want to sell this stuff, right? You just want to lend against, you just want to borrow against it. So that will be super important for Bitcoiners around the world. That's my take there. Guys, what do you think? Any thoughts on this, Sam?
Sorry, I was just trying to multitask. I find the price that they paid for the 5% stake in Tether really interesting because 600 mil for a 5% stake, and I think they made 6 billion last year. I don't know if that was that profit. So you're looking at pretty much 10% of the overall profit for a 5% stake in the business. Seems pretty low. So yeah, I mean, I'd want a piece of that action.
So I thought the exact same thing. I ran it into Claude just to get like a general idea of like what this is. So okay, I used 4 billion because it was like 4 billion that quarter was the guess of how much they make. So I think it was 4 billion was like all of the profit of like Coinbase made for a year or some shit. Anyways, so I did that and I was like, give me rough calculations for a decently high growth company. How much would that be worth? And they said if it was 4 billion quarterly profits extrapolated over a year, how much would that actually worth? 5% of the company, and it gave me like $6 or $7 billion worth, assuming like 12 times multiple for whatever, assuming it's going to continue to grow. So hearing that, and then hearing like little play of the political stuff, my thought is, well, one, yes, that sounds cheap. Sounds like a pretty nice little sweetheart deal where Tether says, we'll give you low valuation on 5%. You, the guy, has to divest, whatever. But then he's like, as long as you go play baseball in Capitol Hill for us, right? Now you represent us. We'll give you your company a sweetheart deal for 5% stake. So now that indirectly they've paid this guy to go and represent them inside of Wall Street, or not Wall Street, but Capitol Hill. Totally speculation, but I think that's kind of how this stuff plays out.
100%. Like they don't. There are certain things that money can't buy, right? So I suspect something paying
like what
full
paycheck?
Huh?
What has no price tag for you? What can't we buy from you?
Political connections.
Your love.
Love and political connections. Both go hand in hand. What was I going to say? I think that, yeah, I mean, as you said, I don't have anything to add to that. Actually, I think it's an attractive deal for sure. I do think it's one that anyone would want to bite their hand off. It'll be interesting in terms of valuation because there's word that Circle wants to IPO next year as well, right? And people always talk about like, look, if you don't want to buy ETH, or if you don't want to buy crypto, how can you bet on the future of crypto without actually holding crypto itself? Obviously, up to this point, there's always been Coinbase as one of your options. And then there will be Circle as well. If you think there's going to be more stable coins in the world, which people I think do think, maybe bet on Circle. But it will all depend on the valuations because oftentimes, you know, these things hit the market and then everyone just, it's no different to a crypto launch, to be honest. These things come to market. I remember even when Coinbase came to market, it just dumped straight away aggressively. So got to keep your eye on that in terms of the valuations to make sure it's appropriate. But very, very interesting news coming out there, continuing the kind of trend of bullish Bitcoin news. Let's get into maybe some more degenerate stuff, maybe concerning stuff, frankly. The pump fund stuff, Brad, has been quite concerning over the weekend. People are taking two sides of it in some ways. Do you want to just set us up for what exactly is happening and then give some takes?
I actually don't, because it is so heinous, but I'm going to anyways because I got a job, right? So, all right. So I have to imagine anyone listening to this is aware of the current trend in Pump.Fund. Pump.Fund, being an application for launching meme coins, also facilitates the ability to live stream while you're launching the token. The combination of the one, engagement you get from the live streaming plus the direct financial incentives has led to people doing more and more and more ridiculous stuff, I would say, is probably the nicest way to say it, in order to get the direct financial benefits of their token pumping, right? So they set goals on the back of their board to say, I'm going to do X whenever token reaches Y. The problem with that is we see the incentives. The incentives are to constantly do more and more dramatic, crazy, weird, heinous, illegal, frankly, things in order to get your token to pump. And as in a couple examples that we've seen, you're also up here on screen. Yeah. So this is a big one. Like, people are in the trenches looking through all these live streams. Remember, there's thousands of these tokens launching every single day, which means there's a lot of these things that we don't even actually see because it's just like lost in the way, just like Twitch, just like whatever. You have streamers that are streaming to one or two people. I'm sure we're seeing this here, but people are beheading chickens, they're punching their kids, they're locking themselves in cages, they're committing robbery. Like, it's really turning into stuff that is at the edges of human capabilities that I think we should try to avoid. So people are calling for the platform itself, which has already repeatedly said things have always been actively monitored from the beginning, and they are continuing to do that. They're trying to make their mod team more robust. But I think we can all see what's going on here. And if, like, in social media, which does not have a direct financial link, although there is a financial link that you get through sponsorships, ads, payments, whatever, we've seen how far humans have gone down that path of like doing weird, crazy, some would say ridiculous, abhorrent things for just the clicks and then some of the money after that. Now we have the clicks and we have the money directly tied and in wallet, right? So I think we can predict that the things that were produced, we'll say the Paul brothers, right? That crazy shit that is just like cascaded into relevance in human society out of just social engagement. Now we're going to see the next form of that, because it is not only just the engagement, it's engagement plus literal wealth instantly if you do crazy shit. So people wanted to stop because of where we see this stuff is going. Pump said it's not going to stop. It becomes a question of whether we think someone's going to step in and actually force them to stop.
Great breakdown. I think that perfectly communicates the details. The question mark still stands when you say if Pump are going to stop. I guess there's different ways that can even be interpreted. Sam, what are your thoughts when it comes to it being stopped? What does that mean to you? What do you think would be a viable way forward for this to be, in quotes, stopped? Because I can see a variety of paths.
I mean, you could go off the poly market bet, as in like it literally being seized by the US state or the US government and basically shut down in the US. Now? So that was at 97% chance before 2025. So yeah, it's pretty high.
Within a month, I think, wow.
Yeah, literally 90. So literally a 3% chance that it's not going to be shut down before 2025. So that was a bit of an interesting one to see. But I mean, the stuff that we're seeing is escalating. But I also think it's people are competing for that attention. So you've literally got like a list of all these live videos. People are going in and clicking on the ones that they think are the most interesting or the most like batshit crazy. So people are just getting more and more obscene. So I can understand why it's escalating, and there is an element to human nature. But I do think that like if you look at Telegram, the CEO being like put into handcuffs by the French like government, like he's got a platform that he's maintaining, like he's not necessarily responsible for what happens on the platform. And I do wonder whether there's an element of that with Pump Fun, although they do have a duty of care to shut down and moderate certain aspects of it and kind of ban stuff that is that way and kind of complying with the legal jurisdictions which they're in. And I don't know if they're based purely in the US or whether they're international, because I don't know how that would necessarily work. But because as with decentralized tech, it's very hard to shut down globally. So to your question,
do we think there's like an OFAC compliance thing? Tornado Cash got on an OFAC compliance list, and that forced people that like any transactions that were going to and from Tornado Cash had to be censored. There's a big thing with Solana or with Ethereum. I wonder if we see, because like, yeah, you're talking about bringing down the streaming, right? That's one element of shut down the streaming component. It's also like literal banning of if you interact with this program, like you're illegal, right? Like you need to submit an OFAC compliant thing at the end of the year and do your taxes that way, all that shit.
That's to that point, I guess, like if for instance your wallet touches a token that comes out of Pump Fun that is like banned or whatever, then you could, that could be quite risky for that particular person. They could go down that route because it's all on chain, so you can track it. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's very hard to shut something down just decentralized, but you can penalize the end user.
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective, I actually don't think this one is. I don't think it's a novel case, basically. Like, I know people will look at it and think that this is the next stage of social media, and I think that is true because the gap between the monetization and the content is just getting shrunk. And so now, rather than having to wait for like a brand deal or someone to tip you or whatever, like, I don't know, it's just getting tighter and tighter, that gap between monetization and content. But in principle, as it relates to platforms, and I used to do a bit of work on this when I was a lawyer, trying to make sense of like the regulation of the internet more generally, because I specialized in media litigation. But in principle here, it's just a question of to what extent does the platform need to take responsibility for the content which is produced on it. And that's been a battle that I think platforms have been having with regulators since the beginning, because they obviously don't, there's a legit point to be made, right? Which is from the regulator side, from the platform side, which is we have created a tool. Lots of people will use this tool legitimately. It will be of great benefit to lots of different people for different reasons. In the same way that a knife is useful to people in some ways, and then some people will abuse that use case, and things like that. So that will be a legitimate argument. Although the other side is that, look, there's some absolutely heinous things going on here, like absolutely outrageous. And therefore, that's why what happened from the law perspective was like, look, we don't necessarily need you to shut down completely. And this is why I was trying to have that distinction between what does it mean for Pump Fund to stop? Does that mean the whole website gets taken down and they're not allowed to operate? Or does it mean they need to stop these very specific things? And in English law, at least, the two directions of content that seem to be universally accepted as like, look, we're happy for you to censor that. And I've seen some arguments emerge that like, look, this is censorship, like you can't censor anything, just let it be, you can't control the internet, blah, blah, blah. But there's actually law already that says there actually are certain things that you can take down. Like child pornography, for example, is one which is universally agreed, legally already documented, that is not allowed anywhere. And that you can hold platforms accountable for if they are deemed not to be doing enough to like deal with the issue. Look, it might still happen, but if they don't clamp down on it in a reasonable amount of time or deal with it exceptionally quickly to the point where it then deters anyone else from ever doing it again because they know that the consequences are so serious, that will be one of the ways that they can kind of meet the regulators halfway, where it's like, look, with this specific issue, we will deal with it. The other ones, I think, were general violence and incitement to violence, I think is one as well. So again, there's always a gray area when it comes to these things, but it's is interesting. Where do you guys stand with it at the moment? What do you think personally?
I mean, it's pretty horrendous. I think that Pump Fund need to do more to remove certain things. So whether that's using some of the funding they've made to pay for moderators to take things down a lot sooner. But I don't know. I do feel like they have a duty of care to do, like you say, censor certain things. And I just don't think that's being done at the moment. So I think that needs to be resolved. But I don't think the whole platform should be shut down in its entirety.
Yeah. Brad, final take here before we go to the next one.
Cat's out of the bag. Like no matter what is done for Pump, like if the market has shown that they want this stuff, like just like with other shit, like you can try and shut it down, but the people who want to do it will find a way to do the thing. So I think Pump, yes, they have a lot of money. They should work. They should actually like obviously work to like reduce people firing guns out the window or threatening to kill their parents. Definitely don't have that stuff on the internet. Awesome. Unfortunately, if you were to just like stamp this thing out, given that this is all a decentralized system, you're going to have people spin up copies that allow for the exact same thing because the market has shown that like whether or not this is good, they want it, right? It's exciting, it's whatever. So,
do you know what though, Brett?
boys?
From a corporate perspective, though, I think that's actually fine. That would be an optimal scenario for Pub. I don't think if I ran the company and someone was to say to me, "Well, you have to shut it down, or you should probably shut it down, but it's going to end up somewhere else anyway." It's like, great, go somewhere else. Like, take the illegal stuff somewhere else. We can go back to printing money in the legal way, and everyone can leave us alone, right? So I take your point, but I actually think that's a positive scenario. It's like, look, I agree. Yeah, like humans tend towards that dark side every now and again. Someone will spin up a copy and do that somewhere else. It's like, look, this is my company, my brand. I don't want that touching my brand. We can print money without that. So that would be my final thought on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was just saying, like, if you shut down Pump entirely, like just gave it like a zero, like Pump's done.
That's not,
as opposed to like cutting out that.
Agree. I think that's not a reasonable solution. And I think people who suggest that it's just too far. They need to deal with the specific things. Look, we're running out of time today, but I think it's really important Sam gets a chance to break down this thing. So we'll probably run a little bit longer because I think this is a very interesting development. Sam, Binance published AI crypto report over the weekend at some point. You did a little bit of a breakdown on Twitter, but I know you read the full report. I'm happy to share either of those on the screen whilst you break it down.
Awesome. Yeah, so Binance released a AI crypto report, kind of looking at AI agents specifically and their intersect with crypto. It kind of talks about a comparison of like AI agents versus bots, just to clarify the differences there. And ultimately, it's just that reinforcement learning as an AI agent, and that they can actually go away and achieve objectives as opposed to just doing a task. But it then goes deeper into basically saying that, I mean, the overall arching sentiment is that the space is very nascent, and there's a lot of potential for a huge upside. And some of the protocols that they mentioned in there are so Truth Terminal and Goat. So Goat's the token that Truth Terminal endorsed. It's got Virtuals Protocol, which is the one on Base. So that's kind of like a launch pad for AI agents. And it talks about DAOs.fun, which is like a launch pad for DAOs related to AI agents. So AI16Z came out of DAO.fun. So you've got those two kind of main protocols talked about, and then obviously the Truth Terminal thing, which kind of catalyzed the whole meta back in. Well, I think that was actually launched in July, but it didn't really get mainstream attention until probably late September. It then talks about sort of like what's actually happening in this space, and there's a very good diagram that kind of illustrates the different kind of market segments and how there's specific AI agent leaders within those segments that we don't necessarily get coverage on Twitter. So it's just to illustrate that there are AI agents out there, and this has been going on for a very long time. So yeah, you can see that diagram on the screen now. And I think that to your point that you made earlier, B-Check, around like you're just not impressed with a lot of these AI agents, and that makes sense. Like a lot of this is new. They're new products that have come to market, but there's actually a lot of other stuff that's been happening for some time. The main difference this time around is because AI agents now have like wallet integration and those crypto rails, so the intercept between AI and crypto, that unlocks a lot of autonomy that wasn't necessarily there before. Like if you think about AI agents previously, they wouldn't really be able to do much transacting because of the TradFi system that has those KYC procedures. Like you won't be able to do that autonomously without sort of human intervention. So I think crypto rails just make a lot of sense, and that's why you've got this like these two separate communities that have come together that are quite excited. So the AI community and the crypto community, and it just makes sense in terms of like a synergistic sort of like partnership. But yeah, in that regard, it's relatively new. I mean, Truth Terminal has a wallet, so they've got a Sol wallet. He was given a Bitcoin grant from Mark Andreessen. I think you've got Vader, which is a virtuals one. They've got a wallet as well, and there's a bunch of other ones that are popping up that have wallets. They're actually paying humans to do various things for them. I think, was it Luna? So that the virtuals protocol leading AI agents, like their flagship AI agent, actually paid someone $1,000 just because they were engaging with their content. And we had Jensen on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, "This is just crazy." Like, we had to go in and investigate why this was the case, because it just didn't really make sense. So like that to me is super interesting. But where it's going to go, and the Binance article talks about like DeFi, so AI agents using strategies in DeFi, so plugging into DeFi protocols and just like maximizing yields and doing these objectives to try and achieve certain goals, but using these protocols. And that is just coming to market now. And there's protocols like Almanac, who they came to market, I think, this month, and a bunch of other ones that these can now plug into. And I think that we're yet to see like that kind of develop. And another area that they touch on as well is collaboration. So you might have seen reference to swarms, which is effectively where you have a collective group of AI agents interacting, and they'll learn at probably an exponential rate compared to just in that siloed environment. So that those two aspects could actually catalyze significant growth, and it kind of alludes to that in the report.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I do agree with you that when they start doing more on-chain transactions simultaneously, that is the thing that'll be more interesting. At the moment, it feels a little bit to me too similar to just other bots that you can get to reply to things on the timeline. Although I appreciate, it's kind of, you can have specific ones that are trained on specific sets of data, which is cool, and that is newer than just having a normal bot. But where do you see it going then, Sam? Like when it comes to Almanac, I saw the trailer for that. Actually, they did a cool video. Like it looked pretty cool. What's the distinct thing between that and just running? Algorithms already exist, right, for trading. So why would anyone like ourselves, but maybe we don't have access to the trading algorithms necessarily? Is that why they're so good? So then suddenly retail has access to AI trading algorithms, or what's the difference between a normal trading algorithm and having your own AI person?
Well, I think launchpads and accessibility is definitely a thing. Like you've got VVIFU, so waifu.fun on Solana. You've got DAOs.fun on Solana. You've got virtuals on Base. So like the average user can actually end up using and building their own AI agents, and then kind of launching various like modules to kind of make them better in terms of interacting with like on socials or connecting a wallet. And I think that similar to what we saw in 2022 with like ChatGPT, like it's the first real time like retail's had access to AI in like a useful manner. And we're beginning to see that with these AI agents. So I definitely agree with you. I think that is probably like a catalyst. But I think for me, like the actually seeing these interact with other AI agents in these like so-called back rooms, and then actually autonomously speaking to other people on Twitter, like replying to people and actually having those conversations and understanding that thought process is pretty interesting. But I think the wallet interaction as well is something that adds a different lens. Like you look at KOL, there's literally a bot called KOL, which I think Legendary's spoken about recently. You send it tokens, it will shill the tokens, but it will floor the tokens and then buy back its own token. So it kind of appreciates the value of its own token, but then it has a vested interest in that. And you've seen protocols like Vader, who's creating like an investment DAO, which effectively it has these analyst bots or analyst agents like AIXBT, ZeroBro, and a few others as strategy people, but they have vested interest in each other by buying each other's tokens in their own wallets. So it reminds me of like the Friendtech era with the 3-3 model. Like I'll buy you tokens if you buy mine, and we just don't sell them. And then ultimately you kind of accumulate more and more, and it just appreciates in value. And I'm interested in seeing what's next. Well, will they fall those tokens in certain circumstances, like using, I don't know, terms like slashing or whatever, and penalized for various things, and how those interact based off information that they receive. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity with that integration with crypto. And I think that's the main difference between normal bots and AI agents.
I like it. Great summary, great conversation. As I said, I think it's very nascent, and you've kind of explained that too. But huge potential, and something that we'll definitely keep on top of the whole time. Brad, any final thoughts on that or anything else as we close out?
Just that I feel like I'm going to regret in like a month or two by totally fading all of this stuff. Like I'm watching it just take place and like not paying attention. I'm kind of following AI XBT and whatever. I think there's going to be a future dread regret, but you know, I'm willing to live that future.
Nice to get ahead of it. And the thing about the future regret, once you're cognizant of it, is that you're going to regret it now. That's the unfortunate thing about future regrets. Like, you've already recognized it, which means that your present can be regretful as well as your future. So enjoy your regretful time for the next few months. But guys, that was a great show. Lots of interesting topics today. Appreciate it. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X, we're live on YouTube, also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify too. Check us out, subscribe to the YouTube, that's growing. We do more and more different snippets from the show there, both on just short side and some of the longer segments, which if you miss the show, you might want the most important 10 minutes, and we're uploading those. So please do subscribe to YouTube, check us out, have a wonderful day, take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.